Hi, everybody. We're
Happy,
back.
happy National Coming Out Day
Yeah, unhappy
time
murder and mayhem.
for the universe.
But we will fill you in on what we know this week and hope it is useful to you.
Yes, both bad news and good news, and inspiring news in some cases. Much more.
In just about 10 seconds.
And we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Hum,
I'm Ann Northrup.
and happy National Coming Out Day today when we're taping on October 11th. And Spirit Day is October 19th. And I'm coming out about turning 70 on October 19th. And I don't want any gifts. Just support Gay USA if you can.
I don't know why you would mention your birthday, but that's up to you. We also
Why am I mentioning it? Because I'm a gay man who has survived, the AIDS crisis and a lot of other things, as we all of us have in a diverse society. So that's why I'm mentioning it, because a lot of my brothers or sisters are not around.
Well, we also have missed International Lesbian Day on October 8th, but we'll have plenty of lesbian news. And we also will have a little update on one of the people in our opening intro video, Cynthia Wade, who's the one sitting there with the Oscar. She's continued to garner praise and awards.
But let's get to the headlines. Trump this week directly quoted Hitler on immigration, and he endorsed that thug, Jim Jordan, for Speaker of the House.
Yeah, and Alabama's closeted governor has ordered teacher guides trashed over LGBTQ and race content.
This is my favorite story of the week. The 4-H club in Ohio, well, not how it all went down, but the 4-H club in Iowa censors and loses two great kids over a rainbow.
Plus an ally. A Trump-appointed judge in Oklahoma has let the law go into effect that, among other things, forces trans minors in gender-affirming care to detransition over the next 6 months.
Cake is back in court in Colorado.
Good news, more progress for non-binary people in New York.
In Philadelphia, police have identified a suspect in the murder of out gay and AIDS journalist Josh Kruger.
There have also been some arrests in an attack on a gay man in Chelsea, New York. That's a good piece of news. We will note the passing of a Long Beach, California gay pioneer, a leading out gay movie director, although he wasn't very happy about it, the creator of an edgy opera blog, and a Canadian landscape architect in love with pink.
And Ann and
The color, not the singer.
Yes. And Ann and I are going to make a rare public appearance on October 16th, celebrating the 50th anniversary of the LGBTQ theater company, Tosos.
You can join us.
Yes.
Or support Tosos. All right. So in the news, well, we should say at the top that we are as horrified as everyone by the violence in the Middle East. It's just heartbreaking and horrible. Beyond that, we don't really feel qualified to say a lot more. But I want to draw your attention to something now running on HBO, a documentary called oh my God, where did I write that down? No Accident. And it's just under 2 hours about the civil trial for damages against the right-wing fascist terrorists who marched in Charlottesville, Virginia. And the case was led by Robbie Kaplan, the famous lesbian lawyer who won the Edie Windsor case some years ago to make the federal government acknowledge same-sex marriages. But
and the E. Jean Carroll case against Trump.
Yes, that too. So she took on this case for plaintiffs who were injured physically or mentally by these Charlottesville demonstrations. You know, all these people marching around with tiki torches saying, Jews will not replace us. Just horrifying terrorism. And as I watched it last night, excuse me, I couldn't help thinking about the parallels to what's going on in Israel and Gaza right now, and the rise of very vicious terrorism. Excuse me.
Take a sip of water. That's great.
Highly recommend this documentary on HBO called No Accident.
And you know, we thanks for that. And I'm going to look into it. Love Robbie Kaplan. For National Coming Out Day, here's a positive story. In the Los Angeles schools, they've provided teachers K through 12 with a week of action toolkit with suggested lessons around LGBTQ topics, highlighting biographies of LGBTQ advocates like Jazz Jennings, Elliot Page, and Carl Nassib. It also includes an allyship pledge for students to sign, promising, quote, to use kind language when talking about all teachers, staff, classmates, and their families, even if they are different from themselves, and to be an upstander if they are different, and to be an upstander by sticking up for others, if safe to do so. Otherwise, ask a grown-up for help, and encourage others to be allies. You know, and I only know about this story is because who was playing it up? Fox News, who thought it was awful. But I think it's absolutely fantastic.
It is fantastic, and it's fantastic that we haven't heard any pushback on it since it. Well, I guess it's happening today, but we haven't heard about any terrorist marching in the streets to try to shut it down. And wouldn't it be great if a lot of other places did the same thing?
Yes, and on October 19th, schools will mark Spirit Day. We'll all mark Spirit Day. Young people are encouraged to wear purple, which symbolizes spirit on the rainbow flag, and as a statement in support of LGBTQ people and against bullying. It was begun in 2010 by a 16-year-old Canadian girl, Brittany McMillan, in response to the Tyler Clementi taking his life, a gay college student. And so it continues to this day, and we'll all be wearing purple next week.
I am hoping that President Biden, in the midst of all the horrors going on, will fulfill his appointment to be the keynote speaker at the Human Rights Campaign National Dinner this weekend on the 14th. He has been the keynote speaker at the HRC National Dinner 3 times before, twice as vice president and once during the Trump administration. We've told you that the HRC dinner will honor Lena Waithe and Shonda Rhimes and Matt Bomer and a group of young people who organized a trans youth prom. But the president and Mrs. Biden are scheduled, Dr. Biden, are scheduled to show up there at the dinner on Saturday. We'll see what happens.
Well, he is, you know, obviously he's totally immersed in what's going on in the Middle East, but he has been doing some other things. When Freedom to Marry celebrated marriage equality in the United States, he was the keynote speaker here at that celebration in New York. Anyway, some more good news. Thomas James, a Navy petty officer who charged the shooter at the Club Q mass shooting in November, along with Richard Fierro, has been awarded the Navy and Marine Corps Medal established in 1942 for non-combat heroism. It was presented at Peterson Space Force Base in Colorado by Rear Admiral Scott Robertson, who asked James, "Why did you do what you did?" And James said, "I wanted to buy time for my friends. I wanted to protect my community." Because, right after the attack, he said, if I had my way, I would shield everyone from the nonsensical acts of hate in the world, but I'm only one person. So we need a lot more Thomas Jameses.
We do, but thank heavens we have him and a lot of other people like him who are standing up in all sorts of ways, and we'll get to more of them as we go along. But first, we have to talk about someone who's the opposite.
That's Trump. Well, he was interviewed on the right-wing website, the National Pulse, and he had this to say about asylum seekers coming across the border. "It's poisoning the blood of our country." That's a phrase that is a construct Adolf Hitler used to describe Jews, homosexual people, and others that he said should be exterminated like insects. Trump also came out for extrajudicial executions, shooting shoplifters. I mean, it's just, Duterte in the Philippines only shot drug dealers. I'm not excusing that. It was horrible. But now Trump wants to shoot shoplifters as well. And where are the condemnations and even the questions? I mean, I saw Ron DeSantis on MSNBC today. He doesn't get asked about this, and Trump,
They occasionally ask him Trump questions, but it is shocking that someone could still be a viable candidate for president of the United States after saying these things, and that people could just take these statements in their stride and say, "Oh, well, that's Trump."
That's why we call it fascism. And by the way, fascism, Rachel Maddow has a book out about it, how popular fascism was in the United States, how many people sided with Hitler before the war. It was quite powerful in those days.
20,000 people at Madison Square Garden for the rally for Hitler.
Yes.
In the, late 30s, mid 30s?
No, 1939.
Even worse.
I have a correction from last week. We were talking about female senators. And yes, when Barbara Boxer and Dianne Feinstein came in, they were the first time the state had two from California. But there were others in 1993 when they took office. Barbara Mikulski of Maryland was already there. Also coming in were Patty Murray of Washington, Kay Bailey Hutchinson of Texas, and Nancy Kassenbaum of Kansas had been there since 1978. So there were 7 in total in 1993. There are, how many do you think there are now? 25. A total of 60 women have served since 1789.
Oh, boy.
The first was from Georgia.
When I was looking this up last week, in some context, there was someone during Reconstruction in the 1870s, I think, named Blanche. And I thought, that must have been an idiosyncratic woman there then, as there were a few idiosyncratic Black senators. But as I looked Blanche up, it turns out Blanche is a man.
Okay.
So be careful as you research.
And Michael can be a woman. All right, let's talk about that. Now, you'll know more about the speaker's race by the time many of you see this around the country,
or not.
This is the chaos people like Steve Bannon wanted, and they're getting. So the leading contenders, Steve Scalise won a caucus vote today over, but he's the guy, Steve Scalise, the guy who said, "I'm David Duke without the baggage," the Klansman from Louisiana, where he's from. And then there's, Jim Jordan, even the mainstream media says a shameless bomb thrower, and more is coming out. I mean, we had Denny Hastert, who was a wrestling coach who actually molested high school students. Then we've got this guy who demonstrably covered up the sexual abuse of college students at Ohio State on the wrestling team. Many people testifying to this, no matter how much he denies it. this team doctor, Richard Strauss. By the way, the only time Jordan was, one of the things Jordan said, knowing about that fact that Richard Strauss was an abuser, was, if he tries it with me, I'll kill him. What a guy.
It's there are no words.
Well, and Marjorie Taylor Greene says she won't support a speaker who won't pass her bill banning gender-affirming care for minors and restrictions for adults.
Yeah, that's her ticket. That's the ticket for her vote.
You've noticed the switch by Representative Nancy Mace from South Carolina. She was originally considered one of the more reasonable Republicans, but her district apparently changed. When she was confronted with the stuff about Jim Jordan and the sexual abuse stuff, she feigned ignorance. Oh, really? Oh,
I don't know anything about that. And she's been one of her great platforms is against sexual abuse because she was abused, but now she's perfectly willing to put that aside. So the great thing is that Nancy Mace was walking around the halls of Congress the other day wearing a white shirt with a big red A taped on it. And when people asked her, what the heck is that? She said, that's my scarlet letter because I've been so abused for my vote against Kevin McCarthy. So you see this story online, and there are all sorts of, memes commenting on this, saying, scarlet letter. So you're an adulterer, Nancy? Is that what we're to take from that? And they go on and on and on. There's one that says, are you Alvin the Chipmunk, with a picture of Alvin with a big A on his chest. It's really quite clever.
Anyway. All right. Where are we? Cake. Let's go back to Colorado. You remember the Colorado baker, Jack Phillips.
Wait, before we leave Congress.
Oh, okay.
George Santos.
Oh, right. I forgot. Okay, I got a couple of other.
Okay, our miscreant, out gay Republican representative from Long Island, New York, has just been indicted again on new charges of fraud, campaign finance fraud, and just outright fraud. Turns out that he did have a few donors, and when he got their credit card numbers, he charged tens of thousands of dollars to their credit cards and gave himself a lot of the cash.
Well, I hope they will get rid of him soon, and his trial is starting soon. But former Representative Tom Suozzi, the Democrat who gave up that seat to run for governor and failed miserably, is going to try to reclaim his seat and probably has the best shot at it. It's a very crowded field of Democrats and Republicans.
Yeah, there are about 6 Democrats running for that. So you're right. Suozzi has the record of being in the seat and the most name recognition. So he probably has a leg up, but he's going to have to get through a primary.
And then you remember a woman named Allison Esposito, the out Republican former cop who ran unsuccessfully for lieutenant governor in New York, running with the anti-LGBTQ, Lee Zeldin. Well, she's running for Congress in New York's Hudson Valley, in the seat currently held by Democrat Pat Ryan. She favors a national abortion ban, among other extreme positions.
I do not give her a chance.
Well, it's a swing district.
We shall see, but I think that is the definition of a long shot.
And let's go back to LaFonza Butler, the new out U.S. Senator from California. She has been given an extension until October 27th to decide if she wants to be the designee of the Democratic Party. It's an open primary when you run there. Yeah. Democrats do endorse people. So Adam Schiff, Barbara Lee, and Katie Porter are the other candidates. And Labor, of course, is at once happy with a former labor leader being in there, and unhappy with her work for Uber, doing some, I wouldn't call it exactly union busting, but against classifying its drivers as employees.
I think 2 weeks still is too soon to expect her to make a decision on that, unless she really wants it, in which case she'll put her name in there anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Now can we go to Colorado?
We can, because I love Colorado.
Well, you remember Jack Phillips, the Colorado baker, who won a qualified victory at the Supreme Court when he, in 2018, after refusing to bake a wedding cake for a gay couple. Then he was sued by a trans woman, Autumn Scardina, to see if he really would serve LGBTQ customers as he said he would. She just asked for a cake, a pink cake with blue frosting for her birthday and to celebrate her transition. Now that SCOTUS has upheld the right of the web designer to refuse service to LGBTQ people who haven't asked her for service, the Colorado Supreme Court is going to hear his case, Jack Phillips' case, refusing the trans woman. Her lawyer says the website decision was narrow and applied only to businesses that are creating speech on their own. But the question is pink and blue icing speech or not?
Or religion or discrimination. There are a lot of ways this could go, but this is where we are. We keep saying that we're caught in this dilemma these days in courts about freedom of religion versus non-discrimination.
And I'm read this week about, we've told you about what's happened to the new College of Florida, Ron DeSantis turning it into a complete right-wing place. But he hired his friend, Richard Corcoran there, a former Republican Speaker of the Florida House, to be the president of the school at an annual salary of $699,000, which is double what the previous president made. In other words, he's turning it into a piggy bank for right-wing nuts. And, they should just rename the school the He-Man Woman Haters College of Florida.
Yes, because the only people going there are athletes who, because it's being turned into a school for them with no academic requirements.
That's what they want. Okay.
All right. Well, in Alabama, things are not great either. Governor Kay Ivey, who we believe to be a closet case, is bucking that description by ordering $16,500 worth of teacher training books trashed because they're too woke. Yes, there they are, scattered on the floor.
These were materials from the National Association for the Education of Young Children's Developmentally Appropriate Practice book. It reads in the book, LGBTQIA plus people need to hear and see messages that promote equality, dignity, and worth. Also discussed larger systemic forces that perpetuate systems of white privilege. Now, these are teacher guides. They're never meant to be read by the students. A Republican lawmaker sent it to the closeted governor there, who said woke concerns have zero to do with a proper education. Divisive concepts have no place in Alabama classrooms. Divisive concepts. Every time she opens her mouth, it's a divisive concept.
Don't you think white supremacy is a divisive concept?
Well, that's what she's saying. She just says, just don't talk about it at all. But of course.
But I'm saying if you trash all those books and don't want to talk about race or gender or sexual orientation, that to me is a divisive concept.
Agreed. Let's at least be grateful that a court got to redraw Alabama's divisive racist house lines, after the legislature defied the Supreme Court and said that and did it badly again.
Now, the Scholastic Company, which is a publisher of textbooks and books for youth nationally, has always been I think a progressive organization. Well, now they're getting in on this. And what they have said to 120,000 school book fairs that they supply books to nationally, they've said, look, we are going to segregate books about race and gender and sexual orientation into their own pod. And you are welcome to tell us you don't want those books at your book fair.
Segregation now, segregation forever.
We will separate them out for you, and we will not impose those books on you at your book fairs. Now, some schools are saying, we want those books. Others, not so much.
Let's go to Wisconsin and talk about the school principal in Raymond who's suing for anti-gay discrimination. after the board voted to remove him because he was gay. He says board members did nothing when anti-gay comments were directed at him, and the district also canceled benefits for his partner.
Now that's Jeff Peterson, the principal in the middle there. And you can see just behind him, a parent holding a sign saying, "Keep Principal Peterson." The parents showed up in some large numbers to argue for him keeping his job, but that didn't do any good. The school board is a right-wing school board, and they wanted him out just because he's gay. And so he's gone at the moment. Now, Governor Evers of Wisconsin has told LGBTQ activists that he will veto every anti-trans bill that the legislature passes. And they are, of course, a heavily Republican legislature. They
have a veto-proof majority.
They do. So whether they will welcome his vetoes or not, we shall see. But he's promised to try to fight them.
All right. Let's go to my favorite story of the week in Iowa, in Odebolt, O-D-E-B-O-L-T. I may not have said that right. Some kids at a 4-H club had a project, an assignment of painting positive messages on store windows. And let's go to the videotape to see what happened and how these kids handled it.
Franny and Elwood Burns loved the 4-H club.
And I just liked helping out.
Do better things, give back to my community more than I was able before.
And their mom thought it'd be a good way for her children to get involved in the community.
It's a social setting for kids to get together, which I think is great, especially our kids are homeschooled.
After a project went wrong, the whole family is rethinking the club. On Sunday, the children volunteered to paint the windows of local businesses.
You need to put the club's name up, something about joining 4-H, and from there you can have a little bit of creativity.
Elwood painted at the local newspaper.
I painted the words 4-H is for everyone, and underneath it I painted a small rainbow.
But when his mother and sister drove by the next day, the painting had been changed. The rainbow erased.
I wasn't expecting that at all. I was kind of in shock. Inclusion should not be erased from a window like that.
Their mother contacted the club leader and found out the club removed it.
And it was indicated to me that the club leaders received some comments about it, and so they had to take it down.
It's unclear who complained. The newspaper says they didn't have an issue with the message, but the choice still bothers the family.
It's not great.
In a letter to the club, the children say they feel uncomfortable continuing as members, and they, quote, feel they are discriminating against the LGBTQ plus community by erasing the rainbow. They hope their choice makes the club leaders rethink their actions and the example it sets.
Another child has quit the Odebolt 4-H club in solidarity with the Burns children. The 4-H statement program leader says they are, quote, working with local staff and volunteer leaders to address this situation. We are committed to creating high-quality learning environments in which young people feel a sense of belonging. They build skills to make a positive impact on their communities.
But 4-H is not for everyone.
Well, and when you hear that there are complaints, the first thing that comes to mind is one person in the local club didn't like it and forced them to erase it.
And the majority don't stand up to them. That was, by the way, Franny Burns. She's 10 years old, and her brother Elwood Burns, 12. 4-H is funded by the United States Department of Agriculture, and it withdrew a policy of welcoming LGBTQ members in 2018 after pressure from the Trump administration. So
maybe the Biden administration will change that. But this is what I mean when I say at the top of the show, we talked about people who were discriminatory and bigoted, and that there are people like the Colorado Springs hero from the Club Q shooting and these kids in Iowa who just have a different value system and say, I'm going to stand up for this and I'm going to do something. And if Franny and Elwood in Odebolt, Iowa can do that with the support of their great mother, and with an ally who followed them out of the club, a lot of us can do a lot more.
Well, who's going to stand up to the National Hockey League? The ice hockey pros are now banned from using rainbow-colored tape on their sticks. Players might now refuse to take the ice if there's a drag queen or a gay men's chorus singing the national anthem. All part of the backlash against pride events and pro sports. Ending the league's LGBTQ inclusive "Hockey is for Everyone" campaign. The NHL says specialty jerseys, including ones that have rainbows, can still be sold, but they can't be on the ice. So give us your money and we will do nothing to merit it.
Well, this all started, first of all, the NHL is one of the first pro sports leagues to be supportive of gay players, gay fans, there was a gay son of a team coach or owner, coach, I guess. And so they were out there pretty early. But now this is all turned around in large part because of Russian players who got upset at having team celebrations of pride because they were still very Putin affiliated and said, this is against our values, against our religion, against our whatever. And we don't want to be part of pregame festivities that celebrate pride and have to wear rainbows on our shirts. And the league has just caved to this and said, fine, we will erase all traces of it. But you're right. They said, we'll still sell rainbow decorated merchandise in our stores. So yeah, give us your money. But it's
okay.
a shocking backpedaling.
Let's go to Oklahoma, or maybe we won't. A federal district court there, judge appointed by Trump, allowed the state ban on gender-affirming care to go into effect. So it's now a felony for doctors to provide such care. Judge John Frederick Heil, that's his name, the third, wrote that the law is not an outright ban because it allows trans adults to access the care. So the Oklahoma law forces trans minors currently receiving such care to detransition over a 6-month period. It also allows prosecution of healthcare professionals until that patient turns 45, and civil penalties and loss of medical licenses. Cruelty is the point.
Well, there's a bad trend because, a number of states have passed these bans. They've all been challenged in court. The first decisions were all to put those bans on hold while the cases were litigated against those laws. But lately, courts have been going the other way and say, no, the law can go into effect. You can still continue your litigation against it, but we are putting these laws into effect unless and until higher courts overturn them.
In Murfreesboro, Tennessee, they're being sued by the ACLU over its efforts to silence a local LGBTQ group, the Tennessee Equality Project Foundation. They denied them a permit to host its Borough Pride Festival last year on city property, bowing to pressure from anti-drag activists, citing an ordinance that bans indecent behavior, as including acts of homosexuality. The ACLU says they're censoring lawful speech.
One tiny piece of good news in New York State, the state will now allow an X gender option on any applications for public benefits. You no longer have to mark male or female, you can mark X.
Okay.
But now into the violence portion of the...
Well, a couple of other things. We talk about banned books, many on LGBTQ themes, but there's a big database now online of 1,400 LGBTQ family books for ages up to 12 years old. So go to mombian.com, MOMBIAN.com. It was founded in 2005 as sustenance for lesbian moms, but it's open to all, and it's a searchable database, and I will include it in our email, and you can be on our email list by going to gayusatv.org.
Anything else before we get to...
Campus Pride is out with its list of most unsafe campuses for LGBTQ plus youth. Schools that openly discriminate against LGBTQ students, often applying for for an exemption from Title IX so that they can legally discriminate and still receive federal funds. They're almost all religiously affiliated and almost all fundamentalists, but you don't see this in the Catholic colleges, actually. You do see it at Yeshiva University and, of course, Liberty College, home to Jerry Falwell.
Well, a lot of the evangelical colleges, I'm not positive about the Catholic ones. Are you?
Well, no, I looked at the list, the entire list. There were Holy Cross, Notre Dame, Villanova, St. John's. None of them are on the list.
Okay. All right. In Philadelphia, we've told you about the murder of activist and journalist Josh Kruger at home, shot with 7 bullets in his own home. The cops have now identified a suspect, a 19-year-old neighbor who, on the right there, Josh on the left. The neighbor had been getting some help from Josh. Josh was continually trying to help people who needed help. And we don't know the circumstance. First of all, he's the alleged shooter. He hasn't been convicted of anything yet. And we don't know anything about motive of why he would have shot Josh. But this is the police solution at the moment. We'll continue to follow that case. And then in New York City, there was a demo yesterday here as we're taping in support of firing the cops who shot to death Kowalski Trawick. You were at that demo.
Yes, in 2019, he was a gay disabled man shot in his kitchen by 2 police officers. His family and activists did that demonstration, calling on the police commissioner and Mayor Eric Adams to meet with the family before making a final decision about the fate of the cops. Because so far, the NYPD is whitewashing the whole thing. And so I sat through Adams' entire press conference, trying to get a question about this, but somebody from another publication asked him about it. Will you meet with the family? And he kind of fumbled around. Well, it's not entirely, we're going to look into this, whether some of the evidence was covered up or something like that. But after that, I always want to meet with families who've been subjected to violence.
Well, what he said was they're looking into the charge that the NYPD slow walked the release of evidence like the camera footage.
20 months
to just release the footage. That's a year and 8 months. And then they had missed the deadline for the statute of limitations. And that's the basic argument on why these officers should not be punished. So the mayor was asked and he said, well, we're investigating that charge. The police are looking into it, but I can't meet with the family until this is resolved. That would be inappropriate. I will meet with them after this is resolved. Well, that's not doing anyone any good.
There's another demonstration at City Hall planned for Thursday at 11 a.m. on the Brooklyn side of City Hall.
Okay.
And there is also a national trans visibility march and rally set for Saturday, October 21st, kicking off from the Stonewall at noon and ending up at the Chelsea Piers. There's a whole week of events that will be in our email as well.
And just in case we think we live in a neighborhood untouched by any of this, there's a terrible story of a 72-year-old man who was walking down 9th Avenue, just a few blocks from us, 8 o'clock in the evening, and was jumped by 4 kids who beat him viciously, broke his jaw, yelling anti-gay slurs at him, effing faggot, and no knowledge of whether he is gay, but he was hospitalized. They have now caught 3 of the kids that they think did this, ages 13, 14, and 16. And this is just violence. I do not believe that I'm in great danger walking around New York City, but things do happen, and the random violence is just horrendous.
The guy in Brooklyn who, he looked at somebody cross-eyed and the guy came up and stabbed him to death. I mean, That story was quite famous.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some people who died of natural causes.
Yes.
The co-founder of Long Beach Pride, Bob Crow, has died at 78. That's him there on the left, after a 6-year battle with lung cancer, survived by his husband, also there, Tony Almeida Crow. They were together for 29 years, married in Harvey Milk Park in 2013. Bob was originally from Alabama, and with Judith Doyle and Marilyn Barlow, founded Long Beach Pride in 1983, and it has become one of the largest in the nation. The first parade lasted just 30 minutes. They got it over with. They were nervous. And the next year, they were wearing bulletproof vests because of the antagonism in the community. This is Long Beach, which, of course, eventually had a gay mayor, right? Robert Garcia.
Yes.
He's now in Congress.
Yep. All right. And in New York, we lost James Jordan, age 69, who was the creator, writer, publisher of Parterre Box, a zine about opera. And he was, to call him an iconoclast would be a vast understatement. He was a critic. His publication, Parterre Box, was an indispensable part of the opera world. And he created in 93. He was described as hilarious, vicious. His stuff was great. He wrote about the demonstration we did at the Met against the Russian conductor, but he was just absolutely uncensored in his writing about his gossip, his criticism. But even the executives of the Met appreciated him and talked about how he was.
Peter Gelb, the general manager, said, "I know that his blog was often very critical of the Met and me, but ultimately he was on the side of opera, and I always respected him for that."
He was from Louisiana, and when he was a teenager, he and Tony Kushner, who he grew up with there, were making costumes for a production of HMS Pinafore. He grew into this criticism role after costume design and other artistic endeavors. He also wrote for the New York Times, for Gay City News. He was just a fabulous guy and a really important person in the opera world.
69 years old.
Yeah.
And the great movie director, Terrence Davies, has died at 77, known for his semi-autobiographical study of working class life, Distant Voices, Still Lives, about a bullied gay boy based on himself. Also, Benediction, which is one of his more recent films about a bisexual World War I poet, Siegfried Sassoon, and his adaptation of Edith Wharton's House of Mirth. And another one that I saw, The Long Day Closes, about a 12-year-old boy in Liverpool in the 50s, again based on himself. He said he was bullied at Catholic school every day for 4 years as a boy, every day. Very ambivalent about his relationship with his homosexuality, but he said he wasn't built for cohabitation. But The Guardian called him a few years ago our greatest living director. He was a late bloomer, by the way. He made his first film feature past his 40s.
And then in Montreal, Canada, Claude Cormier, 63. A famously innovative landscape architect. He was hated by the critics, but loved by the public, and very against sort of the canon, the rigid architectural canon. He had much more of a playful sense of humor and did many projects in Toronto and Montreal. This is from Montreal, called Pink Balls, that he strung up for 5 years running for part of the year over the gay Montreal revitalized neighborhood. He thought that, in fact, the neighborhood, which was somewhat run down when he started doing this, would be revitalized just by doing this. And it was true. He brought many thousands of people into the neighborhood and provoked its renovation.
He, having grown up in the age of AIDS, being 63, he designed for pleasure and joy his colleague, Mark Halle, said, he changed hearts by making you feel good. His last project was Love Park, which included a vast heart-shaped pond, once again in pink.
And not the favorite of critics, but definitely the favorite of the people. All right. In other international news, in Nairobi, hundreds of people marched on the capital there of Kenya to protest the court decision we told you about a couple of weeks ago that allows LGBT organizations to register legally as non-governmental organizations.
Let's read one of those signs. The devil's inspired LGBTQ agendas will fail.
Well, what can we say?
Well, what can you say? The Kenya Human Rights Commission, which is an independent group, condemned the hateful campaign protesters, but they went up to Parliament. They want a Uganda-style kill the gays bill. Gay sex is already punishable by 14 years in prison. Take it easy. David Beckham, by the way, who took $150 million from Qatar to promote them as the host of the World Cup, despite their manifest human rights abuses, especially versus LGBTQ people. He got asked again last week about this, and he said, I spoke to lots of LGBTQ people who attended the World Cup, and they said they had a great time. They never felt safer. Of course, for the people in the country, they can be locked up forever, and not to mention the way, the workers who built all that stuff were treated. He once said he was proud to be a gay icon. Now he's just a sellout.
In East London, a gay couple, ages 23 and 24, were viciously attacked on the street randomly by a gang of kids. They ended up in the hospital. No real reaction by either police or politicians, just random violence on the streets.
Well, you call it random violence, but I mean, the Conservative Party, which is failing in the polls, is, again, we've told you about this, but Rishi Sunak, the prime minister, at his convention party conference last week, he stands up and he says, we shouldn't get bullied into believing that people can be any sex they want to be. A man is a man and a woman is a woman. Singer Sam Smith posted a message of support for the country's trans and non-binary community, telling them your humanity and your life matters, sending every one of you much love, but you're not getting any love from the government.
Right.
In Canada, in Manitoba, they had an election on October 3rd, and they voted out the Conservatives, led by Heather Stephenson, who had run a campaign of open racism to Indigenous people and of transphobia. So now the province has its first Indigenous premier, the first in Canada history, Wab Kinyu. He has a checkered past, but he's apologized for some of that with his youthful indiscretions.
Second chances for everyone.
Yes.
Shall we move on to
Yes.
entertainment news? Okay, first,
No AIDS news?
calendar.
No AIDS news?
None from me. Do you
Well,
have
there's a warning about a relatively new STI, Mycoplasma genitalium, or MGen. It's not picked up by the regular tests, but if you have nonspecific urethritis and they treat it and it's not cured, you probably have this thing. And the news is that it's becoming drug resistant. So that that's the problem. Just be aware of it. If you have something that doesn't go away after treatment, it might be this.
Okay. Another reason not to leave the house. Okay. Calendar items for the next few days. This Saturday, as we've told you, New Fest is presenting a special presentation at the Community Center on West 13th Street, Saturday at 3 p.m. 2 films dedicated to Urvashi Vad. A short 18-minute film mostly about her life in Provincetown, with a lot of other things scattered in, an interview with Kate Clinton, her surviving partner. That film is called There Are Things to Do. I've seen it. It's lovely. And they're also showing a film by Joan Byron, Jeb, about the '93 March on Washington and Irv's speech there, which was quite galvanizing to hundreds of thousands of people. So that's Saturday at 3 o'clock at the community center. And then the next day on Sunday, also at 3 o'clock, just so you can keep all your time straight, is this thing we've told you about briefly. Martha Shelley, who was a guest here in recent months, is going to be reading from her book, We Set the Night on Fire, and then will be followed by a panel of her fellow Gay Liberation Front colleagues, people like Perry Brass and Mark Siegel and others, Flavia Rando. And they will be discussing the creation of the Gay Liberation Front. And they're all fascinating speakers and not to be missed.
And Martha's got 3 other engagements around the book next week. All of this is going to be in our email. And 2 of them are in New York. One of them is in Philadelphia. Philadelphia viewers, thanks for tuning in. On Monday, Ann and I are going to be honored by Tosos, The Other Side of Silence. Tosos was a LGBTQ theater group founded 50 years ago. And they're going to be doing this at a club, a new gay club called Red Eye in Midtown from 6:30 to 9. More info at tososnyc.org, and we will provide a direct link in our weekly email.
And fabulous playwright Jewel Gomez is also, I like to think of her as the main honoree, and we're the appetizers or dessert. But we'll all be there at Red Eye on Monday night at, what time is it? 6 o'clock?
6:30.
6:30. All right. All right. And then, news. Sufjan Stevens, who is a singer and songwriter, has come out in his new album called Javelin. And he dedicates a lot of it to his late partner on the right there, Evan Richardson. Sufjan was nominated for an Oscar for doing a song for the movie Call Me By Your Name. But this new album is dedicated to Evan, and this is the first time, I guess, that Sufjan has officially identified himself as gay.
He called Richardson an absolute gem of a person, full of life, love, laughter, curiosity, integrity, and joy. Stevens himself is now struggling with, how do you say this, Guillain-Barré syndrome?
Yeah.
And so he's got some of his own health issues. But yes, a highly accomplished Grammy-nominated singer-songwriter. Go ahead.
One of our favorite allies on this show has been Cynthia Wade, film director, who was here several times when she made the documentary Freeheld, and then the feature film version too. But she won an Oscar for the documentary that was about the cop in southern New Jersey who fought for her partner to have survivor benefits.
Laurel Hester.
Yeah, she was dying of cancer. And Cynthia made a great documentary about them that won the Oscar, and we had her here several times as she was going through that process. Well, and she's in our opening video, sitting and holding that Oscar on our set. Well, now she's won an Emmy for a new documentary called The Flag Makers, a short documentary. It's running on Hulu. I watched it. And it's a really, really moving, wonderful documentary about this flag factory in Wisconsin, I think. And
Oak Creek, Wisconsin.
Staffed almost entirely by immigrants who come here and make American flags.
Maybe this will make the American flag unpopular with the right wing.
Well, I wish this would be shown everywhere where there's any debate about immigrants, because their compassion, their openness, their love, their hard work, everything else shines through so clearly in this documentary. And congratulations to Cynthia, who always makes thoughtful films. And
it's only 35 minutes, and it's available on Disney Plus.
and Hulu.
Okay.
So it's really terrific.
All right.
And also running at the moment on Max and Investigation Discovery is the Matthew Shepard story, an American hate crime, on the 25th anniversary of his murder in Wyoming. It has a date there for when it premiered, but you can catch it on Max.
Right.
We haven't seen that, or I haven't anyway.
And Anne, tell me about the Real Housewives of New York City.
Well, I can't believe I failed to mention this last week, but there in the middle with the glasses and the long hair and the plunging neckline is Jenna Lyons, former creative director and CEO of J. Crew. And she's the breakout star of the new version of The Real Housewives of New York. And she's an out lesbian. So the woman standing next to her, looking very coy, sorry, there on our right, her left, is Bryn, who has been flirting with her and went with her to Henrietta Hudson, where Jenna was looking for a new girlfriend. I mean, it's crazy that she would go there, but it's sort of an event for the filming of the show. But there was the whole crowd at Henrietta Hudson, all the lesbians in town, the younger lesbians in town, and Jenna Lyons looking for a date. It was really surrealism in everyday life.
And you wanted to tell us about
Deadlock. A friend of mine recommended this, and it's running on Amazon Prime, as you see there. It's an Australian series, just one year so far, about 8 episodes, I think. It's actually set in Tasmania, and it's just lesbian everywhere. They're all over the place. This is a comedy thriller. The tall woman standing back to back in the middle is the police chief of the small town. They're looking for a killer, someone who's going around and murdering a lot of men. And it's chaotic. It is hilarious. It is, you have to get through the first episode or two before you sort of catch your breath and figure out what's going on, but it really is worth watching. Deadlock on Prime.
They're trying to erase us in many sectors, but
Yes.
There we are all over the place. And we're not going. It's National Coming Out Day, and we're not going back in the closet.
Well, there's a new book out called Queer Here, Queer There, We Are Everywhere, or something like that. I'm not sure I got that completely right. But yes, popular culture is what carries us along when the politicians and the bigots want to erase us. But that's what the documentary No Accident on HBO is about, the fascist terrorists who want to erase Jews and want to erase anyone who isn't straight white like they are. And this is the theme now that we see in the Middle East and here and everywhere. And it really behooves us to pay attention to this.
Right. Stand up against the hate.
In small ways and large, you have every opportunity on an almost daily basis to object to bigoted language, bigoted actions, and take those opportunities, some of them anyway, and you can make a big impact.
Be an upstander. Thanks for watching. See you next week.
And subscribe to us at gayusatv.org.
Okay.